All right, let's prepare ourselves. If you put your hand on your over your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And now over your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. Now, will you just put your hand over your heart, your arms over your heart, and extend your arms out. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is the one that says you are here on purpose, for a purpose. That's a spiritual truth. You are here on purpose, for a purpose. And it's not complicated. It's not a complicated deal. You don't have to get a special workbook. You don't have to go to a seminar. You don't have to lose a few pounds. You don't have to learn how to dress for success. You don't have to go live in an ashram. You don't have to do any of that to remind yourself that you are here for a purpose, on purpose. You're here, the reason you're here, the on purpose that you're here is because God loves you. That's why you're here. That's the purpose. God loves you. And what you're doing is loving God back. You're here on purpose because God loves you, and you're here for the purpose, and that is to love God back. Well, the good news is everything is God. Everything is God. And so our work, our spiritual work, is to learn to love everything. You know, I got a call from a minister that I mentor in the Midwest, and she was saying that she was having problems because her practitioners were saying, you know, I don't want to come to church on Sunday anymore because it's not deep enough for me. I said, well, what have you been telling him? She said, well, for instance, I told him that they had to learn to love everything, that God was all there was, and you have to learn to love God. Look, there's nothing deeper than that. There is nothing deeper than learning to love everything. See, we make this way more complicated than we need to make it, but believe me, it's not always easy. It's not easy to love everything in your life. See, when I say love everything, I mean God is not only the solutions to all of our problems, but God is the very problems themselves. It's all God. See, we want to remind ourselves to make sure that we're distinguishing happy and good. God will only give you good. It's not God's job to make you happy. It's our job to make ourselves happy. But God will only give us good. I often say that God will never give you a vision without giving you a provision. But sometimes the provision is a 2x4. Sometimes it's not so easy to have the provision. You know, one of the things that I had to realize is that I love my sobriety. I love getting closer to God. And for a long time, I didn't love my drunkenness. But you know, I have to love all of it. Did it make me happy? No, and it certainly made nobody around me happy. But if I learned to love that, it's what got me to the place of the spiritual truth that I am whole, perfect, and complete. You have to love it all because God is everything. Well, we're in a series right now to sort of heighten the light that we are. To not only heighten the light that we are, but to learn how to live and walk in that light. We started with Hanukkah. And then we went to Bodhi Day, the enlightenment of the Buddha. And then we went to winter solstice. And from there, we spent 2 days wringing the spiritual nourishment out of Christmas. And today, we're at Kwanzaa, the holiday of Kwanzaa. Now, holiday of Kwanzaa is not a religious holiday. It's a cultural holiday that is celebrating the enduring human spirit that each of us have. It's the fastest growing holiday on the planet today. And it demonstrates the power of the creative process. It demonstrates how we can take something and turn it around in our life. If we will stop trying to look negatively at things and start to look positively at things. It began in the mind of a young graduate student from UCLA named Dr. Maulana Karinga. And Dr. Karinga, he saw what was going on in the LA riots. It started during the LA riots. And he looked at his people and he said, I get it. I get it. I get what you're doing here. I get the rioting. But I want to do something different. I want to do something that will elevate my people. Now, it's important that we understand that he wasn't putting anybody down for rioting. He said, look, I understand this. He said, whenever a group of people are oppressed over a long period of time, they will snap. And we know that. We know that just from the series that we did around Hanukkah. The Jews were oppressed for a long time, and at a point, they snapped. The people in China snapped during the period of Tiananmen Square. Gay people snapped at Stonewall. If you go under an oppression for so long, you will snap. There are thousands of women in American prisons today because they snapped. The teaching point of this for us is to not let things get so bad that we snap. To begin to look at how we can uplift one another instead of living under any kind of oppression at all. Well, Dr. Karinga decided that he would demonstrate the teaching of Ernest Holmes, and that is to turn away from the howlers. Ernest Holmes, in his book, Creative Mind and Success, one of the most powerful sentences is, he said, we must learn to turn away from the howlers. So he did not put the people down who were rioting. He simply turned away from them and said, I'm going to do something, figure out some way to do something that is life-affirming for my people, to let them know that they are whole, perfect, and complete, no matter what any society says. And so he went back to his ancestors. He went to Africa, and he began to study African culture. And he came upon a holiday called Kwanzaa, spelled with one A at the end. And it's a harvest festival. It's a harvest festival called First Fruits. But the thing that I think caught Dr. Karinga's eye is this. It is based on 7 elevating principles. 7 principles that will help the human spirit understand exactly who we are. And he took that holiday and he added another A on the end of it for African Americans. And it's designed to uplift. Now, it has a universal benefit. If we study this holiday and don't allow ourselves to make it a Hallmark holiday, if we begin to really look at what these 7 principles are and how they can improve our lives and the lives of everybody around us, it'll be an amazing thing. Now, I like Hallmark cards. I think they're great. You know, when I first started this, when I first learned of Kwanzaa, you had to hunt to go find a Kwanzaa card. Now they're all over. It's the fastest growing holiday in any of the Americas today. And that's a good thing, as long as we keep it real. As long as we look at the intent of Dr. Karinga and the African nation that came up with this idea of the 7 principles of the first fruits. So I'm going to invite, before I go on, I'm going to invite our president of the Board of Trustees and the co-founder of the co-leader of our Kwanzaa to come up and light the candles.
Thank you. Habaragani.
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 What's the good news? The good news is Ujamaa, cooperative economics. It is my honor to present you with the Nguzo Saba, the 7 social and spiritual principles of Kwanzaa. We're going to light the candles, and I have assisting me practitioner Mignon Pauler. Dr. Mignon will be assisting me. Thank you. So as we bless the altar, we're going to light the 7 candles, also known as the Mashuba Saba. The candles are placed in a holder that is called a kanara. The black candle represents the people of African descent. The red candle represents people and their willingness to overcome struggle. The green candle represents fertility and the hope for the future. So we're going to go ahead and start with the black candle in the middle, and it stands for Umoja. Can you say that?
Umoja.
It means unity. We're going to light the first red candle, and it stands for Kujichagulia.
Kujichagulia.
Kujichagulia means self-determination. We light the third candle. It is green, Ujamaa.
Ujamaa.
Collective works and responsibilities. The fourth candle is red, Ujamaa.
Ujamaa.
Cooperative economics. And then we light green candle for Nia.
Nia.
Purpose. We light a red candle for Kaumba, creativity.
Kaumba.
And we light the last green candle for Imani, which means faith. Can you say Imani?
Imani.
Okay. Thank you. The Nguzo Saba are the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and although the official celebration of Kwanzaa happens once a year, the principles can be used throughout the year. I have an altar in my home that stays up all year to remind me of these principles, and I also take these principles into meditation to deepen my understanding and to integrate them into my life. So I'd like to bless this altar with the Nguzo Saba chant. Imani, Umoja, Kujichagulia, Ujamaa, Ujamaa, Kaumba, Nia, Nia, Nguzo Saba. Habargani.
Habargani. So every year when I get ready to think about the sermon for Kwanzaa, I hope it lands on the day called Nia, which is purpose, because that's not so hard to speak upon. Then I go to praying Imani for faith. And that would be a good thing to be able to speak upon. But today is Ujamaa, and it is cooperative economics. So I thought, whoa, how is it that I'm going to do, what does that have to do with God? What does that have to do with church? Cooperative economics. But you know, God never fails me. And as I took this into prayer and I began to think about what is economics? The definition of economics is the branch of knowledge concerned with production, consumption, and transfer of wealth. Economics is the production, the consumption, and the transfer of wealth. What is cooperation? Cooperative. It means people working together. You put that together, people working together for the transfer, the consumption, and the transfer of wealth. How much more divine could that be? How much more divine could it be if we could all work together to maximize that economics, to maximize transferring and consuming and producing wealth for all of us? Well, notice I didn't say equal. I didn't say creating equal economics. It's cooperative economics. See, when we think about, instead of maximizing, if we think of equalizing the economics for one another, what happens is our minds go to, well, I know people who have less than I do, so that means I have to give some of what I have away to somebody else. And what that does for us is it makes us not want to practice Ujamaa, because we don't want to give away. And it flies in the face of our teaching. See, we don't have to give anything away to maximize everybody's economics, transfer of wealth. We don't have to, because our teaching is this: we live in an unlimited universe. And in that unlimited universe, everybody gets to have the consumption and the ability to have as much wealth as they want to have on the planet. See, it's been a work for me this week. I've tried to practice Ujamaa in my daily life. And so I thought, how can I begin to maximize other people with what I want? And as many of you know, I want this church to grow. And the purpose I want this church to grow is so that as many people as I can get my hands on before I retire to a golf course is to be able to learn these principles that are life-changing principles. And I thought, well, if I want that, then I want that for SLC. And I want that for Christ Unity too. So my prayer this week, my vision this week, is seeing lines of people around all three of our churches. Because that practices Ujamaa. You know who practices it without even reminding ourselves is the Girl Scouts of CSA. Do you know the Girl Scouts of CSA, every time the cookies come around, they get a table back there, and instead of coming up to individual congregants to ask them to buy their cookies, we tell the congregants, go to the Girl Scout table. And what they do is, you just go, if you go up and your cookies, and that child has had one, you go to the child in front of you then. And they keep going around, and every Girl Scout gets the same amount. They're elevating each other. And the parents tell me they sell more Girl Scout cookies in this method than they did by going up individually to each person. Ujamaa can help us begin. But here's what happens. If we don't do that, if we forget that we live in an unlimited universe, that we can maximize everybody's wealth, what happens is we start hoarding. We start hoarding and we start keeping. Here's a wonderful African, if it didn't get taken away, it looks like somebody borrowed it. Okay, thank you. You always have to watch practitioners because they will take your stuff. This is an African story that's commonly used with their children. There was once a chief who decided that he wanted to give a party for his entire kingdom. Everyone was invited. He would provide all the food and entertainment. The only thing he was asked was that each family bring a gourd of wine. This would be poured into a huge pot from which all would be served. All of the villages were buzzing with excitement. People were deciding what to wear and wondering what dances and stories would be performed. It promised to be a fabulous day. One farmer was talking to his wife as they were getting ready on the day of the party and said, "Why should we spend good money on a gourd full of wine for the king's party? Isn't this party supposed to be free?" "But dear," said the wife, "all the king is asking is for one gourd of wine. Is that really asking so much?" But the stingy farmer, thinking himself very clever, replied, "Who will notice one gourd of water in a big pot full of wine?" So the farmer filled his gourd with water instead of wine. When the people were all gathered, waiting for the party to begin, the king called everyone together for a toast. "Let every cup be filled," he shouted, "that we may drink for the future of our land. May this party be as fine as the wine we are about to drink." Everyone raised their cups in cheer before they drank. The farmer then took a sip of his wine, but when he tasted it, he threw his cup down and shouted, "This is only water." All the others had the same complaint. It seems that the farmer was not the only one who had the idea to put water instead of wine into the gourd. They all had done it. So when the day they came to the party, there was only water. The king was so disappointed, he ended the party early. And that's what happens when we hoard. We end our party early. When we are able to practice Ujamaa and elevate everybody into the wealth that they want and should have. See, remember, cooperative economics works when people gather to maximize everybody's wealth. And we want to make sure here that what we're talking about is wealth, which is not only money. Now, at this church, we want you to have as much money as you want to have. We see no sacredness in poverty. But it's not only that. It is so much more than that. When we maximize everybody's self-esteem, the world wins. When we maximize everybody's compassion, the world wins. When we maximize everybody's creativity, the world wins. And that's Ujamaa, to maximize that kind of wealth as well. When you elevate a 3-pound weight, just even a 3-pound weight, over your head with consistency over a period of time, you will strengthen your arms and your back and your neck just by elevating that over your head over time. Well, when we elevate somebody else's spirit over our human mind into the spiritual realm, when we elevate them to being whole, perfect, and complete spirits of light, what we've done is we've strengthened our own mind, our soul, and everybody wins in that time. You know who understands that best? Sometimes the people who understand that best are people who are developmentally disabled. They often get that whole notion of elevating one another. A few years ago at the Special Olympics, 9 contestants, all physically or mentally disabled, assembled at the starting line for the 100-yard dash. At the gun, they all started out, not exactly in a dash, but with relish to run the race to finish and win. All that except one little boy who stumbled on the asphalt, tumbled over a couple of times, and began to cry. The other 8 heard the boy cry. They slowed down and looked back. Then they all turned around and went back, every one of them. One girl with Down syndrome bent down and kissed them and said, "This will make it better." Then all 9 linked arms and walked together to finish line. Everyone in the stadium stood and cheering went on for several minutes. People who are still telling the story. And that's what happens when we practice this notion of elevating other people. See, probably they didn't get the ribbon, but they got something much deeper and better than the ribbon. And that's what we want to look for. What is the deeper, better joy that we can have in our life? See, when we don't do that, religious science is sometimes called a me, me, me religion. You know, it's just about me, me, me. But nothing could be further than the truth. When you study this deeply, you know that until we all prosper, none of our light is bright. Until we all prosper, we'll have a light, but it won't be a bright light. And that's what happens when we practice this holiday. Well, Kwanzaa, I want to make sure that everybody understands, because I have done a general appeal here for cooperative economics for all of us. But let us be clear. Kwanzaa is a holiday started by the black community for the black community. And in this church, we rejoice in that. We don't worry, and we're not scared, we're not offended by people who create things for their own affiliation groups. When affiliated people need to go and be with affiliated people, we rejoice. When black people need to be with black people, and gay people need to be with gay people, and men need to be with men, and women need to be with women, we rejoice in that. We're not afraid of that, because what we know is that whenever we go off with our folks, we make ourselves stronger and more able to come back in love and self-esteem, and a connection that is simply much deeper. So as we practice Kwanzaa, we do it with respect, knowing that just like we didn't ask people who weren't Jews to be Jews during Hanukkah, or we didn't ask people who weren't Buddhist to be Buddhist during the Bodhi Day, we don't ask people who are not African American to be African American on this day. But because of the way this church rolls, as Rebecca says, we rejoice in allowing ourselves to be a part of something very big. And we do that with love. So I have some homework, as I often do for your thing. So I'm going to ask you to celebrate Kwanzaa this way. I'm going to ask you to find one person in your circle to elevate today before you go to sleep. And by elevate, I don't mean just think them high. I mean call them and tell them something that will make them understand just a little bit of what a light they are on the planet. Maybe it's somebody in your office that you would just call and say what you did last week in the office was really great, or send them an email if calling is too personal. Maybe it's calling a family member and just saying, hi, I haven't heard you in a while, and I just love you so much, I just wanted to hear your voice. It doesn't have to be a big, hairy, oh, I'm going to forgive. No, I just call them and elevate them. Tell them you love them. Pick them up. Tell them how fabulous they are. Let's take this message into prayer. Knowing that we're in the heart and the mind and the very presence of the Most High, always. Knowing that what I put my attention to clearly and specifically simply will grow. So I put my intention and my attention on harmony among all people, on festivalness of all people, celebration of all people. I give thanks. I give thanks to the great courage of Dr. Karinga and all of the people who support this holiday. I give thanks for Rebecca Davis and Tanya Beverly for bringing it forth in such a fabulous way here at CSA. I give thanks to the open hearts that are sitting in these chairs, knowing that God is everything. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.